Hi there, my name's Electric Johnny Hat. Hope you're all well. What's the day today? Right, it's Friday today, January 16th. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, obviously. Hope you're all well. So I guess how far have we got so far? You know, by looking into the spark of light, the spark of life. Been looking into it for a few months now. And I'm trying to be really careful with it, not clumsy with it. This kind of research, because you can't be clumsy with this research. You know, finding things that are related in the way that I've been explaining so far to do with the spark of life. You know. Which is all, I'm putting it all down to the concept of fall is to descend, so I'm putting it as the fallen angel. We are the fallen angel. Each and every one of us is a fallen angel, and not something that is made out in the media to be bad, that a fallen angel is bad. Why is a fallen angel bad? A fallen angel is someone that's fallen from a more denser plane. If you've fallen from the mental plane into the astral, then you're fallen. And you have to repent to get back up. So if you've fallen from the mental to the astral, or if you've fallen from the astral to the physical via the etherical, then again you have fallen. So I believe we have all fallen from this tree of life, tree of Kabbalah, if you want to put it that way. Because it all seems to be the same thing when it comes down to the bottom sphere, which is the Mein Kuf, which is the physical plane. But it's all about falling. So if you've fallen from the mental to the astral, you're a fallen angel. You've fallen from the astral to the physical, then you're a fallen angel. And you have to repent to get back up. Now, it'd be like religion that would tell us that we've done something bad to have fallen. But I don't follow religion personally. I just don't. So I think there's a lot of manipulation of the mind that's been put out in the Bible. Can hear drilling in the background. So yeah, this is about the fallen angel and the spark of life. So when you've fallen from the astral to the physical, you can only come through the etherical, so through the electrical. And we know that we know that the physical holds the etherical and the part of the astral. So it's like those three are interlinked together. Because although we're in the physical, when we sleep, when we dream, we go back to the astral, via the subconscious mind. So when you've been sanctioned, I believe once you've been sanctioned from the astral via the etherical into the physical, the only way you can come through is by being reborn, reincarnated, back down, memory wiped. How many times have we fallen? How many times have we reincarnated and not known about it because of the memory cut off? But either way, we have fallen. but we are still in contact with the astral plane even though we're in the physical. And we can see, I don't know, people that are into the spiritual, I mean I am partly, looking into ghosts and through electricity or plasma, all through the etherical part of the etherical that lives in the etherical, like these plasma balls. Well, not plasma balls, are they? Electric plasma that just moves around freely on this electrical grid of the ether. Remember, the ethers are like a grid, and everything moves on that grid of the ether. We have so much to learn about the ether itself and how different parts of the ether works. Because I believe the ether, the bottom line of it, the ether is consciousness. Or you could say, or it's an easier way for people to explain, is consciousness that runs the ether. But I believe there's two in the same thing, one in the same, two in the same. Am I saying that correctly? Am I being a retard? Laugh out loud. So the concept of fall is the descend. The devolution is the process where consciousness is pulled down, devolve. The concept of fall is to descend from the higher plane to a denser plane. If you come from a mental plane into an astral plane, you have fallen. If you come from an astral plane and fall into the physical plane, then you have fallen. Remember from where thou have fallen and repent, then turn around and go back up. That's the whole idea of repent, is the anagrammatic concept, which is the serpent, the kundalini, the coil serpent, the kundalini, the coil line of the repent to go back up the 33 vertebrae through these higher planes. Because remember, we can't see these planes. Well, we can see the physical we're on, or what we think to be the physical, which is a whole new story, a different story of the 6 foot of projection that is done from our own mind. Yeah, someone's definitely drilling. So this is how you repent. This is the serpent that Moses lifted up in the desert. The coil line. The repent. I'm going to light my joint. I am a weed smoker, but everybody knows that anyway. I don't do drugs or nothing like that. Gave up Class A drugs 8 years ago, so I don't do that, or alcohol, but I do smoke weed. I do smoke weed. So the whole point of me looking into all this, the spark of life, aka the spark of light, is to find out what's pushing it through. Is what is pushing the embryo through. Because we see when the sperm hits the egg, it's connectivity, compatible, and there's an explosion of light, an explosion of electricity, and then the embryo is pushed through. But what I've been trying to explain to try and get to the bottom of is what's pushing the embryo through. What's causing the explosion of electricity, the explosion of light, to give that life? What's doing that? That's what I'm interested in. Isn't that what everybody's interested in? Is to find out what's pushing it through. And what I'm trying to do is find connections to that, like the explosion of life. And the next thing I found was to do with quantum physics, which is the observer effect, the wave function, it creates the same thing. The wave function is looking for the photon, or you're waiting for the angle of light, the angel to send down the angle of light, the photon, to you. But it's our wave function that comes for us, because everything is a wave movement, a wave function, a sine wave. So everything is that explosion. The wave function, you're waiting for the photon, the angel, to send down that angle of light to you, send down that photon. And once the wave function, once you look and observe that and accept it, because it's an offering, then you accept it, and then we get the same explosion of light. The same explosion of light that creates life, I believe, from the astral is the same. There's the same connection there with the wave function, how the photon and how we receive light from the angels above, the angles of light above, which is literally coming, I'm assuming, is coming from the same place as the spark of life. Because the spark of light from the wave function, the photon, to create the photon, is doing exactly the same thing, which is an explosion of light. We are being born with a photon so we can see. We're the astral plane, the fallen angel that we are, that I believe we are, that's fallen from the astral plane to cause that explosion of reincarnation, or to give us reincarnation, whether we want it or not. It's happening. But it's the same explosion of light from the photon that's been from us accepting the photon from the angle of light, the angel of light, to give us the photon so we can see, to give us life that we can see, the wave function. So I'm looking for things, other explanations that can go with this. At the moment I've only found, when I say I found two, I've just found two things that are very similar, that come from the same primary. I believe they come from the same primary. Now some people could say about plasma entities and things like that. Well, some people, and I thought about it, and people may think that, that is the same thing, but that's not, to me, it's not. Electricity in the ether is a secondary source of light. It's not a primary, it's a secondary source. So I can't put, and I thought about it, like I said, about putting it in the same category, but it's not the same category, is it? It's a secondary source of light. It's plasma is a higher form of electricity, which is memory. Electricity has memory, but plasma is intelligence. Remember, plasma is intelligence without a physical body. It doesn't have a physical body, but it's a secondary source. It's not a first-hand source. It's not a primary source, like the spark of life or the explosion of light of a photon to give us light so we can see. Them two things, in my eyes, no pun intended, are put in a category separate from a secondary source of plasma creation, whether it is plasma creation or plasma formation. Which electricity is a spark that's created an explosion in the ether to give it that explosion of electricity. It's literally magicked out of the ether in front of our eyes, literally. You can make the spark through the ether. But the ether, like I said, the ether does many things. Controls a lot of things. But it's consciousness that runs it all. Remember, it's always consciousness that runs it all. So, Okay, let's move on to the alien thing. The alien talk. I've just smoked a whole joint now, so I'm kind of ready for the alien talk. Like I said, I am a weed smoker. It's not the biggest, it's not the crime of the century, is it? You know, people out there with chainsaws and people drinking bottles of vodka and stabbing people. You know, I don't think smoking weed is the crime of the century. No. If a stoner, a stonehead, is going to burgle a house, wouldn't they go and knock on the door first? Probably would, because you're a stoner. So anyway, the alien talk. The alien talk. I mean, I did a year, my first year of science, before I got into all it. Well, when I first got into all this, into science, geology, and history, I was into a little bit of science, but I had no knowledge, or experience, or research under my belt apart from the mainstream, which doesn't really. Well, looking back now, you know, it's hasn't done us any favours. It's just it's a mind control thing, isn't it? But I spent a whole year looking into it. It didn't need a whole year. It only needed 3 months. I was quite satisfied 3-4 months into researching about aliens and UFOs. But anyway, I gave it the whole year, went through about 9 of them, or whittled it down to about 9 stories that were put out on the alien and UFO, ancient aliens, all that stuff. Go through all the information from the 90s, go through all Stephen Greer's information, that we now know that Stephen Greer is working for the Rockefellers. Or has been. Yeah. Got quite a bit of information on quite a few things that I put out to do with current events, but I don't really get into current events that much. Not if I can help it, but sometimes I do, and I've got some good information, so I will spread that around the campfire soon. But anyway, we're not talking about current events today. We're talking about aliens and UFOs. So I went through, whittled it down to about nine stories that could have been kind of, or you could put into a category of plausible on the UFO thing. The aliens and UFO. And I think a lot of things that were being seen, excuse the banging upstairs, it's that time of day, but a lot of them could be put down to, because a lot of stuff was seen in the 80s, 70s, 80s and 90s, a lot around the 90s, around Mexico, places like this. But yeah, down to about 9 stories that were kind of plausible, but could be put down to drones and things like that, even back in them times. I mean, drones have been used for a long, long time, 30s, 20s, probably before that. Because they say that the Foo Fighters, aka when the Germans were fighting the enemy up in the air, they allegedly, the Germans knew how to control the Foo Fighters, aka the plasma beings. The orbs, the main orbs of electricity of plasma. Well, they were whizzing in and out of the planes of the Germans and the enemy. So there was rumours going around that the Foo Fighters were actually being controlled by the Germans, the Nazis. And we hear today that Randall Carlson started talking about last year on the Joe Rogan show about people taking control, going back to Tesla's tech and controlling plasma, literally controlling it and using it as a higher form of electricity. or a higher power source, because there's an extreme amount of power just in that ball of plasma you see moving around in the atmosphere on this electrical ether grid. But this stuff burns out eventually anyway, it just burns out, which just means it is a part of the electrical grid of the electrical atmosphere, you know. So yeah, looking into those 9 stories, a lot of them being drones, and that's just said they're going back to the Foo Fighters and the Germans that were controlling the plasma beings at that time, controlling the plasma. The plasma of intelligence was being controlled by the Nazis through different frequencies of controlling the plasma. So the rumour was, the word around the campfire was that the Germans was using the Foo Fighters, aka the plasma entities, as a weapon against the enemy. That was the Foo Fighters. And the Germans that I believe had a lot of information on technology in his time of power. AKA Way was into sort of AKA the Vril Society and psychics and mediums, you know, the whole shebang really. He was into all of it, wasn't he? Whilst being dosed up on amphetamines by his personal chemist. Yeah. So I spent a year looking into the UFO and alien thing. And after the year of finishing it, I just came to the conclusion that all that is. See, look, if you can learn our atmosphere first before you go, and it's hard to do because I could never have done it. Someone said to me, "Well, we'll learn the atmosphere before you look into aliens and UFOs and what goes on in the atmosphere." So once you learn how the atmosphere works, then you have a better understanding and knowledge of what's being moved around in the atmosphere. But I was quite satisfied with it. There's nothing else out there apart from this entities of plasma, which is a higher form of electricity. Electricity has memory, plasma has intelligence. So plasma is intelligence moving around freely. That's why it will never harm you, because it's consciousness. But it will never harm you. But it just hasn't got a physical body like we have. So it's curious to come up to us. If that plasma was in some kind of physical body, would it come up to us? Probably would. Whatever form it decided to take or could take, you know. But a lot of people are putting these plasma entities, which I believe we just share with our atmosphere. Like I say, once you learn the atmosphere, the electrical atmosphere, and how it works and how plasma moves and how plasma is manifested in the ether. Once you understand all this stuff, once you go into electrical engineering, and then you can start understanding the ether and how plasma works and how plasma reacts. Eric Dollard, the electrical engineer, told a story, and he's been quite public with it, you know, in the past, where he was working in a lab, and he had some guys of authority wanted to come over to check out his experiments, because they wanted to see if Eric Dollard was the man, was that new Tesla, the new electrical engineer. Getting noisy in here. So yeah, they say that Eric Dollard was the new electrical engineer, the new Tesla. So they had some people come over from authority to look at Eric Dollard's experiments to do with the lab in, you know, how plasma works through the cosmic induction generators and other experiments that they did to show these guys. But with plasma is a form of intelligence, so it can read your consciousness, it can read your thoughts. This is what they say about how intelligent plasma actually is. And what happened was this plasma felt a presence of in the lab, which was obviously coming from these two guys in the lab, that wasn't genuine, and the plasma reacted to that, sensed it, that these people were bad, they were not here for good. The plasma read this, and then all of a sudden the bulb exploded. The bulb that was in between the cosmic induction generators, the bulb exploded, and the plasma entities rose up in the air in front of everybody, and then just sort of stared straight at these two people that were not genuine, that came to check out Eric Dollard's experiments. But the plasma had a bad reaction to these guys, and saw that they weren't genuine, scared the living daylights out of them, obviously, and the guys ran out of the lab, never came back again. That's how intelligent plasma is. And it reacted to, I don't know, it sensed bad things going on in the atmosphere. It sensed bad things going on, and it reacted to that. Yeah, but this is all I've found is the intelligence of plasma. There's some people out there, which is their right to do, of course, is to look into this as the actual alien presence itself, the aliens itself, which I do not agree with, but people can do their own research, obviously. But I don't agree. I believe all that we do, the other forms of intelligence, is plasma that we share. We share the atmosphere with them. We share this earth with them, because this earth, including us, is runs on electricity. Everything is electric. Literally everything is electric. Dielectricity and magnetism, but everything's electric. So like I say, once you've learned how to understand plasma physics, and how things move around in our atmosphere, i.e. plasma entities, which is just a higher form of electricity, of memory. Like I said, the authorities are actually using these plasma entities, this plasma, high form of electricity, using it in a way of how they're the authorities, they're benefiting from it, from the plasma. So they're basically putting these balls of plasma into certain places, to create massive forms of energy, of electricity, which is what they do. So they're using them for their benefit, just like the Nazis did, Hitler did with the Foo Fighters when he controlled the plasma beings, the plasma in the atmosphere, aka the Foo Fighters. So we know that the rumours back in them times, in the world wars with Hitler and the Nazis and all the black magic and stuff that he got into, the rumours were that he was controlling plasma back in them times, years and years, decades ago. And like I say, Randall Carson admitted last year, which is the same as what Tesla's work was anyway as well, was looking into higher forms of plasma. So the admission is already there of plasma being controlled. But like I say, what is plasma? It's like a higher form of electricity. It's part of our electric atmosphere. Yes, there's intelligence in the form of plasma that acts quite strange and follows vehicles, it follows airplanes, it follows jets. Jets chase them. They're supersonic, and these same plasma entities will turn up in catastrophes, or say like major floods. I've seen videos of floods in China, Korea, these kind of places, and people are literally dying in the water, drowning in the water, and just above them as they're drowning, these plasma entities, these plasma ball things, this plasma is just hovering above them, looking like it's waiting to take their soul when they die. They're waiting for that step over, that connection. I'm assuming to take them back into the astral plane. Or maybe it's their kind of relatives that, try not to get too spiritual here, but it could be their relatives that have come down to take them as they die and take their souls and take them to the right place, back into the astral. You can only assume. I can only assume by that. But no, I mean, I don't see there's anything else that's alien based, or everything we see through technology that we've seen back even from the 30s, the 40s, even like I said, through controlling plasma. But I think we've just been smart enough, intelligent enough, these people that are into physics, deep into physics, that know about how to control this kind of stuff, this kind of entities. So what else does that leave if plasma is just a higher form of electricity that we share in the atmosphere that happens to be intelligence, but it also happens to be our atmosphere, and there's a lot of things that go on in that atmosphere, a lot of thunderstorms, a lot of high power of electricity. Just sit there and sometimes go over some of these videos. I mean, the really, really good ones of major electrical storms. Some of them are really, really scary. Really scary. But it's just showing you how, when you see videos like that, the really extreme ones, and you think, well, that's our atmosphere. This is what it does. It's electrical. It's running a lot of shit. It's running an ether. It's running all of it. And consciousness is running it all. So anyway, what does that leave? If you take away the plasma and the electricity, the intelligence, then what does that leave? It leaves the ocean. It leaves the ocean. They say 75% of this earth is ocean. 25, maybe 30% is land. But the rest is ocean. And it goes, in some places, it goes very, very deep. Very deep. And I've heard stories before about, I think it was underneath the, don't quote me on this, underneath the Atlantic Ocean, that there's another ocean underneath the Atlantic Ocean, another ocean underneath the Atlantic Ocean, or one of the major oceans. And that ocean that's underneath is the primary. So we are only aware of 75%, we can see that 75% of this earth is ocean. It's the seas, it's the ocean. Getting noisy. But allegedly underneath that is the primary. And you go back to the Bible if you want to, and Noah, and seeing certain films, especially I think Russell Crowe done the Noah, showing of the primary water spouts. I'm high. Showing in the film Noah, primary water spouts. So these circles that you see in deserts or dried lands, There's circles all over the world, and they're saying that they're actually primary water spouts. So water shooting up from the primary oceans. And we know about stories about finding certain spring water, around caves and places like that, or in the forest, which all comes back from the primary, or comes from the primary, being shot up in our earth from the primary. And this primary water is very, very, very powerful. And when I say powerful, I mean it's just got all the elements that you need to repair the body. It repairs the body. Something that's been hidden from us for a long, long time. Like people that have found wells, deep wells on their land, and the water itself at the bottom of that well is coming from the primary. So it's literally healing water. It's the primary. But in the Noah story, or the Noah video film with Russell Crowe, it shows the primary water sprouts. Water spouts, not sprouts. It's not Christmas yet. We don't eat sprouts. So, back to my original point, 75% of this land, so 75% of this earth is oceans. And some parts of the oceans go very, very deep. Very deep. So you have to ask yourself, what's in there? What's at the bottom of these oceans? Is it UFOs that are coming out of the ocean? See it all the time. Back in the 70s, I think it was the 80s, may have been before that, Bill Cooper was out. Bill Cooper was a Navy, used to work on the Navy ship. And one day he was out there, and he was the lookout on one of the Navy ships, just looking for anything that's coming in, unexpected. And he said all of a sudden, the oceans just to the side of the Navy ship just made this, the water started turning over in front of him. I think it was him and another guy that actually saw it on the Navy ship. And then all of a sudden, this UFO, this disc, came out of the water, spun on its axis, and then shot up into the clouds. And this thing was Bill Cooper said this thing was so huge, it was as big as a normal aircraft carrier. That's how big this thing was. That came out of the water in front of Bill Cooper's eyes, spun on its axis and went up into the clouds. Now I think around 20 minutes later, the same disc, or maybe another disc, came out of the clouds, done the same thing, spun on its axis, maybe it's a magnetism thing it had to do, separated the water through this spinning on its axis, causing a magnetic field, opened up the oceans, and the disc went straight into the ocean, and the ocean came together after. Like the parting of the oceans, the parting of the seas. But Bill Cooper said he saw that. He did report it when they got back to land, and the people in charge, his sergeant, whoever it was, said, you didn't tell me that. You didn't tell me that. We don't talk about them kind of things. So that was it. And he was not allowed to talk about it. But obviously, Bill Cooper, being Bill Cooper did, he talked about these things. But again, it goes back to what's actually in our oceans. If there's USOs coming out of the oceans all the time, you've got to ask yourself, and they were seeing these things back in the 20s and 30s as well. Stories of UFOs coming out of the ocean, or crafts coming out of the ocean. But is it a secret technology that's been running by the government for a very, very long time? That's been taken over from a past civilization? Who knows? We can only assume. Because we don't know anything about what's in our oceans. We really don't. Films have been made Like James Cameron made that film called The Abyss, which is a magnificent film. I will use that word magnificent because it was a magnificent film. And it had plasma entities in the ocean. And it all got based on this main alien mothership that was at the bottom of the ocean. Which ironically has just come out in the third Avatar. They're actually showing that. James Cameron's actually showing that. So again, are they trying to tell us something about a past civilization that's living in the ocean, that's always lived in the ocean? Or is it just a military-based thing? I don't know. If you're going to hide anything, hide it in the ocean. If you're going to hide anything, hide it in Antarctica. You know. Admiral Richard E. Byrd was a Freemason. He was a Freemason. We always have to think about that. He was a Freemason. And there was 3 or 4 stories that got put out about Admiral Richard E. Byrd. You know. Going over to bring back the Nazis from Antarctica. Bring them back. Join them up and then make a main force of NASA. Other stories were said about Richard E. Byrd that he found the entrance to the Hollow Earth and got taken inside the Hollow Earth, inside the Earth, where it had its own sun, which really could go back to the concave Earth. That story could be quite plausible, explained by the concave Earth, because the concave Earth is the inner Earth. There's other stories that Richard E. Byrd went over and he found the ice wall, the main dome. Other stories saying that he found the main screen, because allegedly they say that the atmosphere, the sky, our sky is actually a screen, and our screen has edges, which are at the poles. So there's many stories that got put out about Richard E. Byrd. Oh, sorry, there was one other one as well, when he went to get the Nazis, bring the Nazis back, that the Nazis retaliated back and destroyed Admiral Richard E. Byrd's force, Navy force, through UFOs that came out of the ocean and attacked his force, his fleet. Yeah, so there's many stories, you know. But again, you know, like the Nazi story there of the Nazis using some kind of aircraft, UFO, to come out of the ocean quite easily and then go straight into an attack. Again, like, you know, he said about the Nazis and controlling plasma in the form of the Foo Fighters. But again, it leaves it to 75% of our Earth is ocean. And at the bottom of that ocean, or the Atlantic Ocean, there's a primary. We have a primary ocean. An infinite ocean. Allegedly. An infinite ocean, which they call the primary. What else could you say about the UFO and alien thing? I mean, I'm definitely going to count out the plasma thing, because say plasma just being a higher form of electricity, and it's just a part of our atmosphere that makes our atmosphere works. And the plasma entities that come down and try to interact with us are just part of this ether grid, electrical ether grid, so they're just moving around on that grid, and they burn out eventually. Like I said, they burn out. They disappear. The energy literally disappears, burns out. And you have the smoke at the end of it. The people are saying are entities. But no, I don't personally believe that. So could there be things going on in the ocean? I've never seen anything. Not personally. You can go by the Bill Cooper story, you know, the Foo Fighter story, the Phoenix Lights, the UFO that, or multiple UFOs that nearly set off the nukes. You know, there's many stories out there, aren't there? How many can you say are actually plausible? But one thing's for sure, you know, plasma is real. I've seen plasma since I was a kid, so I know it's real. I know electricity's real. I know we have a powerful electrical atmosphere, and we have a powerful electrical body, bio body that runs on electricity as well. So all memory goes through water in our body, and electricity and plasma in our body as well, because intelligence of plasma runs our body too, runs our intelligence. Well, I'd say plasma is our intelligence. But all that goes quite deep. Could it just be military that's in the oceans? Or could it be something a lot bigger that actually lives in the primary oceans that we will never ever, I mean the average person, the average bod will never ever get anywhere near. My name's Electric Johnny Hat. Speak to you all soon, yeah? So the more I look into biology and the human brain, because I mean about 6 months ago I started talking about this, 5-6 months ago, about what's being hidden from us, from the doctors, the hospitals, the status quo, about how the human body really works. So I went through this story, I told this story, I quoted from Ken Wheeler, about a professor, a student professor in college that was a mathematician and had an IQ of 124, which is not too bad. But this guy didn't have a brain. He didn't have a functioning brain. So his brain was functioning on the cerebral spinal fluid and his nervous system and the microtubules and all that goes with it. But this guy, this student, functioned his life without a brain. Just the cerebral spinal fluid. So you think if it's possible for somebody to live, and obviously this couldn't have been the only person, there's probably many people it's happened to all around the world, allegedly, about people functioning their lives without a brain, without the two hemispheres inside the skull. So if a guy or many people can function, or should we say it is possible for a person, a human being, to function without a brain. And what do they say a brain is? It's just a computer, that's what they say. The Egyptians threw the brain away. It was a lump of mush. Are they actually telling us something else there by throwing away the brain? Maybe they're hinting that there isn't a brain there at all. And what if that was true? What if, as silly as it sounds, what if we haven't got a brain? What if we just function on the cerebral spinal fluid? I don't know what you're all probably thinking. How silly. You go to the hospital with a brain scan done. Yeah, but you see this on the computers, on the monitors, on the electrical equipment that's supplied. Is it giving us a? Is that picture there for us, or for, you know? It doesn't need to be there. It's just, maybe it is just for us to give us a visual picture of what's going on. But is that really what's going on inside of the skull? Is there really these two hemispheres that they call the mushy brain? I've never seen a brain. Have you? Have you? So why do I say all this? Because I go back to the story of Ken Wheeler talking about the student that functioned without a brain. And I think this has happened to many, many people. So it does give you, or does it give you the kind of argument to say that, do we actually have a brain? Or do we just run on cerebral spinal fluid and the nervous system? And the microtubules that all go with it? Because everything is collected in fields on the other side of the... On 6 feet away from us, there's fields like a mobile phone. I've said before, like a mobile phone works off a network, works through the internet, off a Wi-Fi. It's a connectivity to a network, and we do the same thing. We connect to fields in the ether. We connect to these fields of information that we all share. We all share this information. But kind of all hinting that, do we really have a brain in our head? Do we really have those two hemispheres in our brain? Because I'm not sure. As silly as all this sounds, I know, but we've been lied to by so much. They will not be happy until the general public knows that everything is a lie. Literally inversion of the truth. So as silly as it sounds, can we function without a brain? Yes, we can. Does that mean we have a brain in our head? I don't know. I could be talking complete nonsense. Of course you have a brain. Of course we have a brain. You go to the hospital, they show you on the monitors that you have a brain scan. They show you a brain scan. Yeah, they show you a computer, a monitor that's been wired up to something else. You know, when someone's in the hospital and they have a cardiac arrest, what's the first thing the hospital do? They get 2 huge electrolyte machine things and they stick them onto your chest and they pump electricity into your body to restart the heart. But it's electricity that's pumped into the body to recharge, not recharge, to re-wake up your heart. But again, that could be nonsense. It could be something else completely that's going on. The point is, I don't trust the doctors and the hospitals because everything we've learnt so far in the medical system is an inversion of the truth. But I recommend looking into this, I really do. Recommend looking into this, whether we do actually have brains. Because they say all that the brain is a computer, and that's it. The Egyptians, maybe the Egyptians were making a connection of, a metaphor of throwing the brain away just by saying or hinting that we don't actually have a brain. Worth thinking about, huh? Or am I just crazy? So be careful this autumn, this winter, well, mainly this autumn, I guess, There's many raccoons out there, many raccoons. I mean, I live in England, so I don't have to deal with many raccoons, or any raccoons in this country. We don't have raccoons in this country. But apparently in America and Canada you have a lot of raccoons that are quite aggressive. So be careful not to bump into them